Congratulations, you have a big presentation coming up. All you have to do is combine the slides from the product, sales, marketing, and the finance teams into one presentation. Add your magical summaries and you're ready to go. Except for one thing. Your team decided to use new AI presentation tools instead of your corporate PowerPoint template. Mary from marketing picked Canva. She uses Canva to create her social media posts, so why not use it for presentations? John from product wanted to model some winning pitch decks. He created his slides using beautiful AI. Peter from sales wanted to add some fancy AI images, so he picked Gamma.ai. Gamma allows you to tap into multiple AI tools from one platform. They figured, who's going to know, right? All you have to do is export to PowerPoint. At first glance, everything looked okay, but soon they discovered that their exported slides don't play well in PowerPoint. The theme is messed up, and many slides and diagrams are hard to edit. Oh, and one more thing. Simon from finance collaborated with a large consulting firm. All his slides have someone else's brand. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to combine all the presentations into one file. And make sure to use our branded PowerPoint template. Yes, it's a nasty job, and that's why we have secured an undercover PowerPoint agent to help you. Her name is Hawaida Cotter. She'll show you the next steps. This message will self-destruct as soon as a new AI tool is able to handle this job. All right, let me start off now with the good news. And the good news is that Microsoft PowerPoint is still the universal file format for presentations. It's also the most commonly used, especially by growing teams that rely on a Microsoft ecosystem, which is really some of the top companies, government, and healthcare organizations in the world. And that's because PowerPoint has unique share features that allow companies more control over their data and their privacy, and more control on how AI is used within their organizations, who they want to share files with, and also if they rely on Excel data that they want to bring into their presentations, and if they want to create complex diagrams. So this is good news because many of the files, the other platforms, for example, Google Slides, Keynote, Canva, and now there are so many other tools, AI tools coming into the market, and they all want to claim that, of course, that they have the world best presentation maker. So regardless of the claims, I'm not here to say which is better, which is not, because the market is always changing and technology moves fast. However, what they all have in common, regardless of which of these other tools, is when you click on the export, you're going to find an export to PowerPoint feature. That's because PowerPoint is the universal file format for presentation. So this is going to make it easier if somebody has decided to bring in slides. You can just say export to PowerPoint, and then we're going to attempt to merge them. So this merging part will be reliant on how they export the file. If they export it as PowerPoint, chances are we can salvage a lot of the file. If they export the file as PDF or as images, because maybe they have a free account, if you have a free account, sometimes you're not able to export as PowerPoint, it's going to be a much challenging situation. So in that case, I would say if you inherited files from someone else, ask them if they can locate the PowerPoint. Sometimes they can't. So this is beyond the scope of this video. Today, what I'm going to show you is how do we merge different branded presentations that have been exported from different locations and tools, and how do we bring them into one file so that it matches your own brand. And this brings me to the second good news in PowerPoint, is that PowerPoint has a unique feature which some of the other tools don't have, and that's the multiple theme option. So PowerPoint has a template scenario and a theme scenario. So a theme controls the fonts in your template. So you can control what kind of fonts you want to use for your brand. It also controls the colors, so you get to customize how you want the palette. You also get to customize some of the slide layout, some of the common 9 which PowerPoint needs, and I'm showing you why they are needed, and any other customized looks and layouts that you have created particularly for your organization. A template, on the other hand, controls all of these elements. And it allows you to have multiple themes in the same file. So let me show you what I mean. So for example, let's say I have two branded presentations in the same file. Now I can do something which I cannot do in the other programs, is I can click here and choose another theme, even though I am still in the same template. So it could be something uniquely, maybe you're speaking at a conference and you have two different branded presentations, or maybe you're migrating from a different look and now you have another look. So you want to go through your presentation slides one by one, ensuring that you are tagging them correctly to the new theme. And so that's why I always recommend PowerPoint to most of my clients. Now, of course, if you don't want to be paying for Microsoft, or you're on another ecosystem, or you're just one person or tiny team, you can do anything you want. But any company that is growing and relies on Microsoft, PowerPoint as of today is still the solution. So in this video, I'm going to show you how we are going to be merging different slides that have been created through different programs, and we're going to bringing them into this file. Some of the issues that you might encounter and how you'll deal with them. All right, so let's start with the best case scenario. Let's say you have two properly set up themes that are using PowerPoint best practices, and they each have the first 9 slides that are needed by PowerPoint. Now, these 9 slides are needed because anytime you start a new presentation, notice how PowerPoint has these 9 slides in place, and they are needed by Copilot and Designer for your file to function properly. So if your theme does not have these 9 slides, or you've renamed them, you might encounter some issues when you're moving over slides. That's why I recommend you always start with a properly set up theme and you have the 9 slides in place. Now, if you want to learn how to do that, check out my YouTube channel. There's quite a few training on the PowerPoint template and how to set it. Right now, I don't want to dive too much into how to create this. I'm assuming you already have a properly set up theme. So if you have a properly set up theme and the files have been named correctly, you should be able to do a simple test, and I do that. So you can create a standard. I always do that to make sure the file is there. So I create a slide with each of the 9 commonly used slides here in PowerPoint, and I click and drag and bring them into my theme. Now, I want to make sure that PowerPoint is mapping them correctly. So, for example, if I reset here, this one is working, and I click reset, it's matching the section header, the to content. You'll see here that a lot of them are in place. Some of items I might have to click reset so that the content boxes work, or in this case, the image might be distorted. If I click reset, it's going to work. Other cases, I might have to go in here and move some items around. So, because this one, I have the placement of the sidebar, so you'll notice the sidebar did not translate. So there's a few edits that you can do here. You can start cleaning out things quickly, and then of course, if the footer is acting up, sometimes when you migrate slides, you might have to reinitiate the footer. So I'm going to click on the header and footer, and notice the slide did not have it because the other one did not. So I'm going to click, if they are important, I'm going to click here and say apply all, and now you can see the footers have showed up in place. So this is a best case scenario if you are migrating files using the first 9 slides only. However, what's going to happen is that in many cases, companies create custom layouts. So for example, in this particular case, we have different layouts that don't necessarily match the full layouts of this presentation, like this cover slide, which has a unique image placeholder. Now, if I try to click and bring this over into my theme and template, notice what's going to happen. I've created a little bit of a conflict because PowerPoint is doing its best to do this migration. However, it ended up adding an extra slide to my theme. It contaminated my theme with a slide from someone else's presentation. Now, most people might not realize this because they're not really looking at the theme all the time, and they're going to think, what's going on here? And they're going to spend too many hours trying to clean this up. However, that's not what we want to do because we don't want to contaminate the slide. So there's 2 different ways we can approach this. The first way is if you want to know what slides have been contaminated. For example, maybe you imported hundreds of slides and now you're not sure which one is mapped correctly to your theme and which one is not. There's a simple trick that I use, and that is I go into the back end of the presentation by going into View, Master, Slide Master, and I go to the file that was introduced to my theme. Now, I don't want this, but if I try to click and say delete, notice PowerPoint is not going to allow me to delete it right now because there's a slide that is using this particular layout. So in order to identify them, I click on the icon here and I put a big circle, and that way I can see it on the front end. And I'm going to put a very color that I can see on the front end. So now when I go back into the normal view, I'm able to see what slides I want to move over. So now I know that I need to find a replacement for the slide. So if I click here, I'm going to go into my theme and see, okay, what slide is going to match. In this particular case, I can pick this one here that matches this theme. However, notice that in many cases, PowerPoint might delete it in some cases because it's not being used. In other cases, you will have to go back into the back end and delete it. You have to tell PowerPoint, okay, we don't want this slide in place. So in which case, I'm going to go back into the View Slide Master and I'm going to delete the extra slides which has contaminated my theme and I don't want it. And now when I click delete, I can delete it because it's not being used on the front end. So this could be a scenario you will face. Now, another way is before you import the slides and you contaminate your theme, you can do the cleanup on the other side. So for example, I'm going to go into this slide and I'm going to say, okay, now this slide does not exist in the other themes. So let me go and pick one of the first top 9 slides. So that way, when I move it over, it's not going to contaminate my other presentation. So I'm going to click and choose the title slide, which is a default in the slides that PowerPoint use. Now notice what's going to happen. Because I did that and I click and bring it over, the transition was a little bit faster. So now you know that you can clean it in when you import them, which is might contaminate your file. I don't recommend it. The other option is to clean the file before you start migrating these slides into your own new presentation. Now, what about another scenario? Let's say you actually do want to combine the slides, but you want to maintain the brand, color, and look of these slides. Maybe they were another department or another company, and you are now speaking at a conference and you want to show that these slides are from another company. If you try to click and drag and bring them over, you're going to encounter the same issues. So there's another way to deal with that, and that is to let PowerPoint know that you want to deal with multiple themes, because if you don't let PowerPoint know, it's not going to do that for you automatically. So in this particular case, I'm going to go open the slide master. So now you can see the back end of your presentation, which controls the layouts that you have in place, and you can also change the colors and the font. So this is where you control the theme. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other file that I want to bring over. I'm going to go into the slide master, and I'm going to copy that theme. I'm going to click here at the top and copy and go into my presentation that I want to have everything in place and say paste. Now notice what happened. I have now 2 themes in the same file. You can see here it's called number 2, and you can have multiple themes. You don't necessarily need to have 2 only. And now when I go into the front end of the presentation and I want to migrate these slides, I need to let PowerPoint know, okay, I'm starting a new theme now, and I'm going to be importing slides from that other presentation. So I'm going to click and say new. And before I click and import and contaminate my file, I'm going to go to the other theme here and pick the slide here. So now I know that anything I paste right below the slide is going to maintain its consistency. So I'm going to click on these 3 slides now, and I'm going to click and bring them over. Oh, let me just here try one more time. And notice that they maintain their consistency, everything migrated quickly. However, if I did not put this in place and I started to bring them over right below the blue one, notice what's going to happen. This is where the mess up could happen, because PowerPoint doesn't know that you want to match them to the other presentation. So that's why I always say before you import them, make sure you have an extra slide with the theme that you want, and it's going to be a much smoother transition. Okay, now let's talk about the bad news. And the bad news is that many of the platforms you're going to encounter, they have their different coding languages. For example, Canva is known because it has a lot of the free-form design tools, and it has millions of graphic assets that you can work with. Some of the other tools on the market, so for example, like Gamma AI or Beautiful AI, they work on a grid system, so you don't have a lot of control. You can only work with the grid, very much like a building block website builder. So the way they export the file is going to be different. So you're going to find that some content might come through. Mostly the text will come through. Some images will work, some will not, and that's the same case with Canva. Some of the images might come out as images, some icons which might be editable. So for example, here I can change the color of this item. However, when it's brought into PowerPoint, all of this editability is going to be lost. They become fixed images. So if you wanted the colors to match your theme, you'll need to make sure that the colors that you have used on these other platforms and the fonts are correct before you export them. However, if you inherited files and somebody has already clicked share and they shared in PowerPoint and the colors don't work, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to do that when you're migrating them into PowerPoint. Now let's take a look at files that were not set up properly. So any files that were exported from other platforms, like this one here from Canva, or maybe the one, for example, that was exported, let me see which one here, this one here, which was exported from Gamma, you're going to notice that they are not set up properly. So first of all, they don't have a proper theme in place. So for example, the one here from Gamma, notice how they got imported. It seems to Gamma has created a blank slide for each of the presentations that I've created. So if you've had 20, 30 slides, it seems to be creating one new extra layout. So if I click now and bring them over, I'm going to be contaminating my presentation with all of these layouts, which I don't want. So I'm going to have to do that cleanup before I migrate the slides. And the same thing here with Canva. Now Canva did a slightly better job because Canva picked the first 9 slides that PowerPoint needs, and it seems to have tagged them all to the blank. So everything in here is manually formatted. However, it is a blank slide. So now I know if I bring it over, at least there's going to be minimal contamination. I still have to deal with the fonts and the colors and the layouts, but this is not going to be introducing new layouts into my presentation. So let's start with the Gamma first, because it's a simplified version. So in order to make sure that I'm not contaminating my files, I'm going to do some cleanup before I migrate the slides. And the first thing I need to do is make sure it has a proper theme. So I'm going to go into the View Master Slide Master, and the first thing I'm going to say here is Insert Slide Master, because I don't want to be using any of these, especially because I don't know why Gamma seems to be adding extra unnecessary boxes to these slides. So I'm going to go into the front end now, click on all the slides. Since they are all manual formatting anyway and they are not mapped correctly to the text, I'm going to click here and choose this blank slide. So I'm mapping them. Think of it like a database. If you've ever cleaned out a database where there's the first name, last name, this is what we're really doing. We're cleaning out the database so that when we merge content, it's going to merge faster. So when I click here on the blank, notice what's going to happen. All of the extra slides that would have contaminated my slides are gone. So now when I move them over, it's going to map at least to the blank slide. Now, if that is all you need to do, now you know what you can do. You can just create an extra theme here. I'm going to click Insert Master Slide Master. If that's what you want to do and you want to maintain the way they look, I would click Insert Slide Master. Just keep a blank one. At least now you have a blank one in place. Once again, I'm going to click on the insert and choose a blank one from the white one. And now when I click on all of these slides and bring them over, let me just show you here. We'll bring them over. There is minimal damage. They've maintained some of the look that came out of the box from Gamma. Of course, the font doesn't match, the style doesn't match, but this could be a quick fix if you are going to a conference and right now you don't have time to create the presentations. However, if you wanted to import them as permanent slides and now you want to make them as part of your template in your slides, then we're going to do a little bit more cleanup before we bring them in. Now, if the font and color consistency are important when you're migrating the slides, then we can address them before we move it over. So when I click on the content here, you're going to notice that they are not mapped to the theme. It's using some manual formatting for the font. If that's what you want, you can keep it as it. However, if you want it to map correctly when you move it over, then we need to tag everything correctly. So the first step is to clean out the theme font on this particular file. So I'm going to go on the design. I'm going to click on the design tab here. I can do this from the front end because I'm not changing any of the layouts. I'm just changing the colors and the fonts, and I can do that from the front end. So I'm going to go here on the colors, first of all on the fonts, and pick the font because right now it's using the default Aptos from Microsoft, and I want to use another Microsoft font that I already have a theme for here, which is the Posturama. So if I pick that, at least I know now the fonts are mapping out. And I can do the same thing with the colors. I can go pick the other color scheme from the other file so that when I start tagging elements, they're going to tag correctly, and I know this is the color that's used in the other template. So now notice nothing has happened because here everything was done manually. Nothing was tagged correctly. If I want to tag elements correctly, I'm going to have to pick all the fonts here and go in and pick in the body. And if I wanted this to be the heading, let's assume you had a different heading in your theme fonts. In my case, they're the same. You can just tag it as a heading. And now when you click and drag, the fonts will update automatically, will match properly. Now, what about the color? Now, in many cases, some exported files could be recolorable. However, I found in many cases the diagrams come out as images. So notice what's happened. If I'm going to pick my brand color, which is this one, blue, and I click on it, this color is not changing. That's because it's a PNG image and only the background is changing. So now I know if I'm migrating the slides, I'm going to either have to recreate this or maybe keep the same colors and just, make the best use of it. So if I'm click here right now and bring it over, it's going to do its best to bring it over. If I click on the font, notice it is picking up my heading. Now, of course, the color is not the same. I can click here on all the fonts and make sure that they're white. And if the footer is missing, if you remember we did that before, I'm going to click on the insert header and footer and make sure I just add them, and I have something that can work. But what about if your diagram is dark? Let's say your diagram was done in black and now your background is black and you face this scenario. So in this particular case, what I can do is I can go into my theme and I have two options. I can create a duplicate of the two most commonly used slides. Now in PowerPoint, two of the most used commonly slides is the blank and the title only. So now that I know these are the two most commonly used slides, I can create variations for them that are in white, and then that way if I encounter a diagram that's dark and I don't have time to recreate it, I can do that situation. So this is where you get to decide. You can either create multiple, so you can click here and duplicate the slide layout. In my case, because it was set up okay, I can just do the white and notice how everything has stayed the same. I can just change the color here of the footer, and let's go choose with something a little bit more supple. So now I have a dark and I have a light variation of the blank, which is the most commonly used. I'm going to click rename because I don't want it to be just blank, and I'm going to say here blank migrate, so that now I know that if I'm migrating slides that don't fit the brand, this is a temporary situation. I don't want to be having too many colors, but for now, if that's the scenario, I need something temporary. Migrate, and I'm going to add it. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one, the title slide, because this one is also needed, and I'm going to show you in a minute why the title is very important. So I'm going to right click here and say duplicate layout. I'm going to rename it as well, title only, and I'm going to say migrate. Now notice I'm giving them custom names because this is temporary only. Migrate, rename, and I'm going to go into the background here and make that light. Now you can keep them in this order. However, if you know that you don't want to confuse or eventually you might be moving them to another theme, I recommend you click and drag and just move them to the bottom of the presentation. So I'm going to right now cut and go to the end of the presentation, knowing that these are just temporary for now. I might have to deal with them in the future, and I'm going to click and paste them here. So they are available for me in case I need them. And the title, because the other presentation is using the blue, I'm going to be picking this font here for the title. So in case I do map things out, at least I have something that will map. So now I'm going to go back to the front of the presentation, and assuming I want this to be light, I'm going to go and pick one of these. In this case, because it is using the blank, I can map it out to the blank. However, if you are doing hyperlinks, and this is why I wanted to show you why it's important to have a title, and let's say you are hyperlinking this text here and you want to hyperlink it to slide number 2. So let's say here you have a long document with hundreds or maybe thousands of slides, and now you click on the hyperlink. Let me just actually pick it here so you can see it, the hyperlink, and you want to create a table of content or some kind of interaction in your slides. Notice what's going to happen when I click on the slides and I'm trying to map them. Any slide like this one here, because it doesn't have a title, PowerPoint doesn't know what to do with it, and it just calls it slide 2. Now this is not going to be a problem if you have a short presentation, but when you're dealing with the presentations with hundreds of slides and you want to map things out, you want to be able to see what the title is in that case. So that's why I recommend, when possible, if you want to clean out your presentation properly, is take out this text. So I'm going to copy it here. Let me just copy this. Copy, and I'm going to delete this text box because it was done in manually. And now I'm going to go into my layout and pick the one with the title only. And I'm going to click here, edit, paste special, because I don't want to be introducing any extra elements. And there we go. So at least now I know I have a title. So when I go back into the hyperlink, notice what's going to happen. Hyperlink, and I go back to slide number 2. Now I can see it says sales methodology. So it's going to make it much easier for me to do that hyperlinking. So you get to decide. You can do that by adding an extra theme. So maybe you want to create a light and dark theme. You can do that, or you can just add these, the two most commonly used slides, and have them as a backup for any slides that could be problematic. Now you can do the same process with files from Canva. However, with Canva, there are a few extra steps because Canva sometimes comes in with a different size. So make sure that you're checking the page setup on a PC. That would be the layout. So do check out and see if the size is correct. You can see here it's custom. So I want to make sure first of all the size is correct, and I can do the same thing, map out the font. So in case I want to map out the font, choose the colors, and now choose if I want to migrate the slides. However, in this case, you'll notice that a lot of the elements don't really match. So I'm going to have to decide if I want to keep these. These are all manual formatting. And really, what is important? What is it that I want to move? So maybe in this particular case, only the diagram is the important element. The rest is not. So once again, you can just go through the process, make sure that you're tagging them correctly, maybe body. And now when you bring it over, the font will work correctly. And you're going to have to do a little bit more customization. So if I bring it here right below the dark, notice it's going to be dark. So if I wanted to pick the light, now I have a backup. I can choose the white backup and do a little bit more customization, maybe make the light bulb smaller so that it fits the elements. And once again, if the footer, if you're ever having issues with the footer because the way it's mapped, just go back again and make sure that you reset it. And so that's why all of this element, it's very important to have a strong theme before you start. So a strong theme requires that you have a clean, all of these elements, which are the 5 elements that are needed from PowerPoint. They need to be in place, including the headers and footers, even if you don't plan to use them. And you need to have the first 9 slides in place because these are the most commonly used, especially the title slide. I would say probably this is the most commonly used slide. This one, people use it when they're doing manual formatting. I highly recommend you don't. Try whenever you can to use the title only. And then you can create your own custom layouts that are unique to your own theme, to your own company. And if you wanted a dark and light variations, now you know what to do. You can click on duplicate and maybe have a light and dark theme. Or if you are doing temporary fixes, you can create these extra slides for anything that you don't really know what to do with. At least you have a backup that can give you that framework. All right, let's just make sure as well before I go that the footer is also fixed. You can see here I can do that footer. And now with this setup, it's going to be much easier to migrate slides from different sources. Congratulations, because now you know more about PowerPoint themes and templates than most people do. But if you still need help, I'm here to support you. Check out my done-for-you presentation services and template store. You'll find all the links below this video. Otherwise, I'll see you in my next video. Till next time, ciao for now.